Ever wondered how a tiny, teeny tiny white lie, something that feels like no big deal, can just completely spiral out of control into a total disaster? Well, today we are going to dig into that exact thing, the slippery slope of dishonesty. We'll look at why our brains are basically wired to let small deceptions get bigger and bigger, and maybe, just maybe, what we can do about it.
All right, so let's jump right in. We're going to start with a story that, well, it might feel a little too familiar. You know, the classic, it's just this one-time situation. So listen to this. These are the actual words of a shopkeeper, right? Looking back after his entire business just collapsed. And it all came down to a single decision, when it seems so small, so totally justifiable in the moment. And you can see the whole thing laid out right here. It starts with this tiny, self-justified correction, right? But look how fast it escalates. Within a couple of weeks, it's not a correction anymore, it's just fraud. He's got two sets of weights, one for buying and a lighter one for selling. And that small daily gain, it probably felt like nothing, totally harmless. But then, all it took was one customer, just one person with their own scale to bring the whole thing crashing down. Fines, ruin, the whole shebang.
So, what is actually going on here? I mean, is this guy just a fundamentally bad person? Or is there something else at play? Something predictable, something psychological, even neurological, that could happen inside any of our brains? Yeah, let's get into the science of it, because what's happening inside our heads it's really fascinating.
So it turns out our brains are actually masters of deception. They're incredibly good at letting us cheat, just enough to get a little benefit, while still letting us look in the mirror and believe we're good, honest people. It's a neat little trick. Okay, so the key theory here has a name. It's called self-concept maintenance. And it's pretty simple, really. We all want to think of ourselves as honest, right? I mean, that's part of our identity. But let's be real. We also kind of like the benefits that can come from, bending the rules a little. So our mind does this amazing balancing act. It finds this perfect sweet spot where we can be just a little bit dishonest, enough to gain an advantage, but not so much that it shatters our self-image as a good person.
But here's where it gets dangerous. This is the really slippery part. Once we start cheating just a little, our brain actually begins to adapt. You know that little alarm bell of guilt, that pang of discomfort you feel the first time you do something wrong? Well, with each little lie, it just gets quieter and quieter and quieter.
And this isn't just a theory. We have hard data to back this up. Check this out. Researchers used fMRI scans to literally watch people's brains as they were being dishonest. And they found that the amygdala, that's kind of our brain's emotional alarm center, it lights up like a Christmas tree with a really strong negative reaction the first time a person lies. But look what happens. With each new lie, that response gets weaker and weaker. It's a process called emotional adaptation, and it literally paves the neural pathway for bigger and bigger lies. So here we are with all this cutting-edge neuroscience, right? Explaining what feels like a very modern problem. But what if I told you this diagnosis isn't new at all? What if this exact human flaw was pinpointed with perfect clarity thousands of years ago?
Yeah, it turns out this very same tendency, this thing we do where we use shifting standards to benefit ourselves, was described with incredible precision in the ancient book of Proverbs.
And listen, this isn't just some dusty old rule for merchants back in the day. No, this is a profound psychological insight. The warning here isn't just about using a fake weight. The key word is two. It's about having two different kinds of weights. It's about the double standard. Think about it. The system is designed for cheating, depending on the situation. You use the heavy stone when you're buying, so you get a little extra for your money. Then you switch to the light stone when you're selling, so you give a little less. It is the perfect ancient example of applying a flexible, self-serving standard of honesty. It's self-concept maintenance 3,000 years ago.
Okay, so understanding the problem is one thing, right? We've got the modern science and the ancient diagnosis. They line up perfectly. But the big question is, how do we actually protect ourselves from this slippery slope? Well, let's move on to a practical, science-backed plan. So how do you fight back against your own brain? You use something called an if-then plan. This is brilliant because it's a pre-commitment strategy. It doesn't rely on you having a ton of willpower in the heat of the moment. It works like this. If you feel that pressure, that temptation to just fudge the numbers a little, then you have already decided you will use a single objective standard, like a publicly calibrated scale. And here's the kicker. Then you announce the measurement out loud, right in front of everyone.
And this simple plan is so effective
because it directly targets all the brain's little loopholes we just talked about. First, using one single calibrated standard, that totally removes the ambiguity, the wiggle room your brain needs for that self-concept maintenance trick. Second, announcing it out loud, boom, instant social commitment. The cost of dishonesty goes way up. And finally, by making it a habit, you bypass the need for emotion altogether. You don't have to rely on that amygdala alarm bell that we know goes quiet over time.
And really, that's the solution right there. The big takeaway here is that integrity, it isn't just about having good intentions or being a good person. It's a system. It's a practice. It's about building the discipline to apply one single, unchanging standard to yourself, no matter the situation.
And that brings us to the final question. For you, for me, for all of us. Because this isn't really about merchants and scales, is it? It's about our work, our relationships. It's about how we judge other people versus how we judge ourselves. So the question is, do you use one weight or two? Is your standard for honesty singular and consistent? Or does it conveniently shift to benefit you when no one's looking? I'll just leave you with that.